Hello, I'm Terry Leverett with Prepare the Way. I'd like to introduce our set of speakers coming up. It's Rod and Glenna Callen. Listen well, because they come to this subject of preparation and all matters around it from a 22-year history of living the life. They live on 80 acres and they have learned lessons by making mistakes. And they can save you time so you don't have to learn that way. Thank you.
Detail as to gardening, we're going to give you more ideas. We're going to look at watering systems, irrigation systems, and we're going to highlight especially some things that have worked and not worked for us. So I think you're going to enjoy getting some of that learning from our mistakes part of it too. One thing that we do recommend if you live in town, or even if you don't, is to break out of that box of thinking that vegetable gardens have to go in rows in a spot in your yard. You can use them as landscaping. Some vegetables are just beautiful. This is a flowering kale. That is Swiss chard. And both of those can be used in the midst of plantings, like around the side of a house, the back of the house. And I think the next one perhaps is, oh, okay, this is at one of the community gardens in Kansas City, 18th and Broadway. I don't know if you have happened to go by there. They have some really beautiful things, but they're showing there how you can use vegetables in the midst of landscaping. They have the ornamental grasses, they have marigolds, and then Swiss chard and a kale in there. And it really is attractive. And then you can eat it. Edible landscaping. Okay, the next one. And then this was an idea I had. You know, we grow sweet potato. These are our sweet potatoes. And then we have a lady who does the barrels in our small town, and they're always beautiful. And she uses sweet potato vine a lot because it thrives in this kind of weather. I thought, why could you not grow sweet potatoes around your house as landscaping? Absolutely you could. And they're attractive. The tuber grows underground, so you know it stays pretty all season long. So we need to get creative with some of that. Next slide. Okay, this is Rod's thing, the irrigation. And we have found in the different gardening things that we've looked at that plants can live without soil, but they cannot live without water. You can grow amazing things with just water.
Okay, next slide. Again, we kind of covered this in the water section, but again, if you get 1 inch of rainfall, you get 0.624 inches per square foot. So again, as the example we gave earlier, 1,000 square foot, which is a fairly small roof actually, you can get 624 gallons out of that if you can capture that water. Where we are now, you know, we used to be on a well in our previous home. When we built a new home, we now have actually had real water that came through eventually, and we were no longer on a well. And it's great water, but it is also expensive. Too expensive really to water with if you're watering gardening, because your vegetables become very, very expensive. So one way for us to mitigate that was, since we actually didn't have a pond or a well again, was to capture as much water as we can and then use that for irrigation. And again, just to go over the system components again quickly, is basically all you need is a roof, and you can use any sort of roof. It's the best, of course, is metal roof. You can use a slate roof. They don't suggest, again, using it for potable water if you have a composite or asphalt shingles, although you could use that, again, for irrigating. You need a gutter and downspout, some type of leaf guard or downspout filters, just, again, basically to filter out your leaves and your twigs and that type of stuff that doesn't go into your rain barrel or whatever container you're using. A first flush diverter. And again, all that is simply if you had a downspout coming all the way down to the ground, instead of having the normal where it'd come out into a splash block, you'd have a little plug that just fits in the bottom of that. That would block that off. Then you'd have your tea again going off of your downspout, which would then go over to your rain barrel or whatever container you're using to capture the water. And that way, the first water that falls on your roof would be going in the downspout and would not be going into your barrel. So by the time your water gets up to that level where it's going to go into your rain barrel, the water is clean. And of course, the water, rainfall has zero hardness. So that's another benefit of using rainwater. It's the best thing for your, I don't know if you've ever noticed the difference between, if you're even watering your lawn with your municipal water, and then compare that to when you get a good rain and how much difference it is. And there's so much more nitrogen in the rainwater, and also the zero hardness. Obviously, you need a storage tank or a rain barrel to catch all that. And again, I'll give you that website down there at the bottom, www.arcsa.org, which is the American Rainwater Catchment Association. And again, they have plans online. You can go on there, download the plans. They'll give you all the information you need. It's a great source on how to capture rainwater.
Now I get to give color commentary. Okay. The other advantage of capturing water and using that water is that many times in the municipalities, they will charge your sewer costs based on water usage. And when you're paying that cost, it's not going through the sewer, it's going on your garden. It's like you're getting it charged double. So why not just capture some of your rainwater and use it?
Okay. And the next slide. Okay, this is some examples again of just some rain barrels that somebody has put up. This would probably be, again, you have to check with your home association how much they allow you to have, what you can use. But usually the rain barrels are kind of the hot thing now, so something like this one on the left is no problem. You see the one on the right side there, it's a lot bigger tanks, and that may be a problem in some areas of what they allow you to have, but that's obviously they're catching a lot more water and using it for other sources. So it's a great. So basically, the catchments can come in all different sizes and all different shapes depending on what you want to use it for, and basically what your local home association will allow you to do. Okay, the next slide. And again, this is off my barn and again, if I get probably almost just a half inch of rain, I can fill that circular tank, which is actually 650 gallons off one rain. So, and then I just, as you can see, like on both these tanks, I just have them set on blocks. Then there's a attachment at the bottom with a spout on it, and I can hook up a garden hose to it and water, and basically use gravity feed to water whatever plants we're watering or trees, whatever it is. And in a normal year,
it's plenty.
This would be plenty of water, because you're getting rain. So this year's been a little obviously exceptional in not having rain. But even then, for the most part, we've done most of our watering through method of catching this water.
And I'll add to that too, that large tank looks terrible, all that stuff that's growing inside it. We typically clean that out once a year, and we don't have all that buildup. When we took this picture, it was before that had been done for that season, and we've just not replaced the picture. So we do clean it out, and it's kind of clear, so we have more trouble with that algae buildup. If we had it painted or it was an opaque tank, we wouldn't have the issues that we do. So you might keep that in mind too.
Right. Because they usually just, like saying opaque, because so the light doesn't penetrate it so much and inhibits the growth of algae in there. But again, since I'm using it mainly for irrigation, it's not a big deal for me. And even if I was going to be drinking that water in an emergency situation, then I'm going to be running through some type of filter anyway. So that wouldn't be a problem. But even in your basement, if you have like 55-gallon drums, they always say it's better to have like the colored blue drums as opposed to the white ones. Now, actually, in our basement, ours are white, but they're in a dark place where they're not really getting direct sunlight. So, and again, I would be running that water through a purifier anyway. Okay, next slide. And again, this is just like I say, the weakness we have where we live is because we are on rural water, and it is expensive, and we don't have a well. Now, I could try to drill a well, but I know we've had some friends who've done that, and they drilled a well and they had a $6,000 hole in the ground with no water.
Yeah.
So you know, it's kind of a real iffy thing, and you know, it's not something I'm willing to gamble on. So we put the cistern in again. Again, this is the 1,800 gallon concrete cistern, and you can see the on just to the right of that is actually our garden, and then the way this works, and I think, do we have a picture of the? I think we do. Give it the next slide. I think we may have. Yeah, we do. Okay, so that's the cistern that's buried now. And I had just a little electric pump. I don't know if you can hardly see it, but it's this little electric pump right down here. Has a little hose in it. It goes down into that cistern. And then I just plug that in, and it pumps it up into this 275-gallon IBC container. And then I gravity feed from that into the garden, usually using a drip irrigation system, because it's the most efficient use of water. Or you can just use a hose, whatever it is you want to do, or sometimes even buckets. But it gives us a great source of having another source of water that I can store, pump in. And actually, from up there in the barn that I showed you, the big tanks there, it's quite a ways away, but I can attach 3 hoses and run from that big tank and run down into that cistern and fill the cistern through that also.
So once again, you look at what you have available. And you make it work for you. One thing before we get away from this particular picture, he mentioned how he gravity feeds from there. If any of you have heard of Morgan County Seeds, they have a little irrigation kit that will irrigate 1/4 of an acre, gravity feed, that we are using with our garden, and it works great. It's not expensive. It's around $150. And it's like 1,000 feet of drip line, 100 feet of header line, and it is a really, really good system. So we don't need all of that, so we use it, for replacement for later. But it has all the little, and so the way it works is it feeds out, and then on the rows that we want irrigated, we just turn a little nozzle and they open up. So we have total control of what's getting irrigated. It's efficient. And it works on gravity.
I might say a little more too about the Morgan County seed. They're located in, what is the
Versailles.
Close to the Versailles area, not in Versailles, but it's a great source. It's a Mennonite, Amish type place, and you can get all sorts of seeds at actually a good price.
Everything they have is well priced.
It's a great place to visit too. Okay, next slide.
There's some of our garden.
And that shows, some of the garden
the
again.
Electric fence.
And that's why I had to go to the electric fence rounding. And I might just say a word about that. I have, again, three actually lines going around there. But the top one is a little tape. You can see that tape. And the reason we put the tape on the top was so they'd be visible to the deer. So as they would come up, they're just kind of noisy. They'd basically put their nose on it and get a good shock, and they learn to stay away from it. So it's been quite effective also.
These are sandbags, and I'm going to refer back to those later, but in case you look at that and think, what is that white stuff in there?
And obviously that was from earlier in the summer when things were green.
Yeah.
Now everything that looks on the field is all brown.
Okay, we are always testing things. So these are some of the things we wanted to share with you that did and did not work. Have you heard of the Oya pots? It's pronounced O-Y-A. They are the rage in California. And we keep having questions about this and the Back to Eden gardening are the 2 questions we get in lots of places. So we were like, okay, we want to find out about this. So the way these work is you bury them, and then you water through the little spout. And the theory is that the water seeps out through the clay pots. And it's an efficient way to irrigate. And it has, Echo has tested it. It works in in countries in Africa where they are needing to irrigate in particular spots. Okay, so we tried it. And it's something you have to work with our soil. Just burying the pot and assuming it'll work does not work. Okay, next slide. So I'm going to show you kind of our journey with it. This is the way they use it there. In California, they have the raised bed. So think about raised bed has looser soil, and that would help. And then, of course, they sell the pots, but you can make your own. But that's what it would look like. Okay, next slide. And then here are examples of like strawberries growing with the buried pots. Okay, next slide. So then one of the ideas I saw was to put 2 little clay pots together and seal it. And then you bury it and you water through with a funnel through the top. So I did that in a flower bed and it worked reasonably well. And then this is one that we tried. So this is the other thing they recommended, that you bury your pot, but they said put a cork in the hole in the bottom, and then I have a plate to put on top so the water doesn't evaporate. And then this is a cucumber plant, so we planted the cucumber around it. Well, I mean, that was about the time the drought hit. I mean, this was probably, from the looks of that cucumber, early May. And I would go back and check that thing a week later, 2 weeks later, they were still full of water. And I thought, this is not working. So I just started watering the cucumber. Well, the cucumber grew and thrived, but I was watering it. Okay, so just a few weeks ago, I went out to rip it all out because the plant was done. And I started to pull the pot out, and there were little capillary or little roots all around that pot. So it had done something. So the difference is, and it was an old clay pot, but they say that it has to be unglazed, obviously, but that the more porous the pot, the better. Now, if you take the cork out of the bottom, it all just feeds straight down. And we have cracks in our ground right now that you could fall into and they'd never find you. So, you know, if it's going down one of those cracks, the water's not benefiting the plant. So I'm not sure, you know, I have not seen that it has worked that effectively for us. A better plan that we've been hearing from and have tried is like when you're watering like trees or things that need, well, it could even be in that setting with a squash or cucumber or something, is to take a can or a bucket and put a really tiny hole in the edge at the bottom. For example, here I could take a bucket and put holes around the bottom, tiny holes, and fill the bucket, put the lid on, and those tiny holes, and it would seep out around it with no waste. And then they do that for trees a lot of times because trees need some drip irrigation during drought conditions. But just burying the clay pot was not effective. Okay, next slide. This is another thing we tried. This is from Echo. And it's the Chapin drip irrigation bucket. And they had set this up. It's actually kind of a nonprofit set up by a former irrigation company for missionaries. And in theory, it should work great. You have this 5-gallon bucket, and it has this drip line coming out of it. And it will irrigate 100 feet of row. So, all right, so we set up this little test strip. We thought, okay, if it does that, then it would be 4 25s. So we split it off into 2, which they say you can do. So we had our raised bed, which was 4 by 25, and we had 4 lines of this tape going down it, and as a test, because we thought if this works, and you're in a suburban garden, would that be ideal? You have this 4 by 25 raised bed, you fill the bucket twice a day, and you don't have to mess with all that watering, in theory. Well, it works for them because they have these long rows. So they have 250s running along these long rows, and their soil is different. We bought one, and I think the next slide is our version of it, perhaps. Yes. Okay. This is like early March. I mean, everything was so early this year. So this is what we did. We attached it. We had this old volleyball pole, and we're really big about using things we've got. So we suspended it from that, and this is the corner of this raised bed. So the idea, the kit is like $22. It's quite reasonable. And in certain applications it will work, but not for that. Now I wanted to go back to the slide because in the background you can see here our little row covers. We have number 9 wire, and it's just a roll of fencing material. You can purchase them already cut, but we just got the fencing material and cut them 60 inches and poked them in the ground. In this row cover that I mentioned earlier, this floating row cover comes in big rolls. And it is the width that is just perfect for. So then we just put it over the top. And these are early broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage plants. And then we weighted them down. We bought sandbags and just put some gravel in them. We've tried rocks, we've tried concrete blocks, we've tried everything to weight it down, and it rips. So we just got some sandbags and put some rock in those and do it that way. They just hold better. They hold plastic down better, like if you're doing any kind of a greenhouse application. So that really worked well, and you'll see a picture in a minute of the difference between the plants that were just, in this case, just protected from the wind. It was amazing. Okay, now you can go on. And that's the ECHO website, if you didn't get it earlier, echonet.org. Here are some more of their garden things. Look at that, growing out of concrete blocks. Now again, this takes a lot of water. And then here's the tire, and in the bottom of the tire, they have pop cans stuffed down in socks. Okay, so think about that. The pop can has an opening, so it holds a lot of water. The sock wicks the water. No soil. Pretty extraordinary. Then in this area, they have created this they have a little tiny hut. And this is like representative of a backyard, like in a poverty-stricken area. And a lot of their climates they work with are tropical, so somewhere in more of a tropical climate. But this is like representative of a backyard. So what they've done is they've used supplies that are available to them. The tires, they did do an elevated raised bed, but notice this is only about 6 inches of dirt. And then you'll see some, I think, gutter growing and things in there too. And then they are carefully monitoring it to see what the usage and what the yields are. There's some more. Those are herbs that are growing in the concrete blocks. You know, I'm still amazed because anything, we try to raise bed with concrete blocks and it just baked. I mean, it's just like the sun has just been so intense the last 2 years that in our area it seems like deeper is better, but it depends a lot on the season. Okay, next one. And look at this child swimming pool. On their website, they have all the description of how that works. It's pretty cool. Okay, next one. And then there's the tire with the just cast off supplies, whatever. And then look at this, the mulch corn cobs and pine cones. And those are tomatoes. Now, granted, they are not Missouri, healthy, big tomato plants, but nonetheless, it's tomatoes. Okay, and there's some more of their growing area. All of that is on a big slab of concrete to represent an urban garden situation. You can see that bucket drip system they have operational there and here. So they use it quite a lot. And we need to work with it. It would work if we just need to adapt what we did with it. But again, like Rod said at the very beginning of the first session, don't wait till you're in a crisis to try crisis gardening. All right, and this is the thing that worked well for us. I've shown you the fabric, I've described it. It reduces insect and wind damage and gives frost protection. These things were covered. And I uncovered that day just to see what they were doing. These were planted 2 weeks before these. And the difference in size isn't because of the position of the camera. I mean, they were amazingly different in size, and it was only wind protection. So these were 2 weeks earlier, and those were way bigger and healthier looking. And it's inexpensive, very inexpensive to do. And this is the kind of thing, too, that you could easily just go out and throw over a fall garden when frost is threatening. Or like, if you've grown the brassicas, those little caterpillar moths that are an issue with them. So if you cover them, you don't have problems with that either. So you can grow more organically without insect issues. Okay. We want to show you some of our recommended books and some ideas, some specific ideas that we've highlighted. Terry had mentioned some things that have worked well for him, and if our sound situation was different, I was hoping he could jump in and tell you some things because he loves gardening and has tried a lot of things too. And one thing they are growing very successfully is called a Malabar spinach. Have you heard of that? it's not a true spinach like what we harvest and grow. It's a spinach substitute, but it's a vining plant that loves heat and hot weather. It's a beautiful plant. And in his case, they're growing it along a fence, and it has grown like a perennial. It dies, it doesn't like cold weather, so it died down, and he tore it out, you know, at the end of the season last year. But then it sprouted back this year with a vengeance, and it's just covering everything. And it really is look it up if you have not seen it online, Malabar spinach. And it's like I said, it's really not, you use it like a spinach, that's why they call it that, but it doesn't look like a normal spinach. And there is a particular variety he uses. It's a red stem, R-U-P-R-A, rupra, Malabar spinach. Gorgeous plant. And then they eat it raw, and they cook it too. Now, we tried it one year, and this is what happened with me. It's ready when all my other things are ready. You know, and so I kind of stagger things so that I have something for each season. So it just got away from me, and I didn't really utilize it. But it would be an excellent choice for a sustainable garden. Bunching onions are something else. It's a perennial type onion that I didn't mention that he suggested. And then this Back to Eden gardening, the heavy mulching, I want to address that a little bit too. The way that's done, have you seen that video? It's just everywhere. People are mentioning, it's in Oregon is where this big test garden is. And the theory is you use wood chips. And they have specific ways, and you can Google it and watch the whole thing. But they plant in the midst of wood chips. So they pull them away and plant and move them back around for mulch. And then, of course, wood chips break down. And then, you know, it's like to replicate like the forest floor, basically. It's kind of a permaculture style. Well, my problem with it is all those overwintering insects. The other issue we've had when we've tried a similar thing is just that decaying, depending on the kind of wood that's chipped up and the age of the wood chipped up, decaying wood leaches nitrogen out of your soil. So it did not work well for us at all. Where we would use it would be like around fruit trees or berries, that kind of thing. But in a vegetable garden, we have better luck with cleaning the soil in the fall and adding whatever amendments. And then using, like we can use cover crops. I mean, that's a good thing. Our issue with that though is we would have been doing cover crops now, but there's not enough moisture in the soil to sprout them. We tried it last year and it never, you know, so a lot of those things, it's like, okay, it sounds good, but does it work for me in practicality? What Terry said he recommends, and I agree with this, with that, instead of that, in this area, instead of that heavy mulching of wood chips, is just use compost. Just continually add compost mulching because that feeds the soil, it works well in our climate, and it's just a win-win situation rather than pulling in something that needs to break down. And just a reference to the permaculture thing, that's another real buzzword with gardening now. Everybody's talking about replicate the forest floor. Well, if you've noticed, Rod's been real concerned near our house. We have this forest floor, and in Missouri, what that looks like is trees and brush, you know, but it's dry. It's tender, dry brush that a fire would just be very difficult to stop. And the forest fires, that's been the thing in the West, all the underbrush that's so dry. So yes, in some climates, you know, that works and that sounds good, but there are also times and situations where that theory does not work. And this would be a summer where you would be really susceptible to fires if you have a lot of underbrush. The other thing Terry mentioned was on the raised beds, that he sells a kit for this height. It's a 30-inch raised bed. And if you have someone who is handicapped or elderly, who just that bending and all of that is difficult for them, the taller the raised bed, the easier it is for them to work with it. So his are actually deep beds. You can also even, if you can water all the time, put a shallow bed up on top of something and that will work too. But the taller raised bed will help with that. Okay, should we talk about this? Since people have been wondering about our lasagna garden. That's, you know, it's almost fall. It's time to get your gardens ready for next year. And this is probably our most successful recommendation for growing lasagna. No. For starting a new garden bed. Have you heard of lasagna gardening? It's sheet composting is what it is. And Patricia Lanza is the one who popularized it. This is the one that's, this book is focused on containers. The library has this book. She has her original one, and then she has, you know, application books, which this is one. But the theory behind it is, and we did this in our new space. We did this on our asparagus bed, in fact. It grows great asparagus. You start out with a thick layer of wet newspaper. So you can hose it down, or what we did is we had a tub, and we just put a whole pile of newspaper in, and then just pulled it out and layered it over our section. And in that case, it was like 4 by 20 probably section, thick. I mean, really thick, and overlapping layers. And then you just start layering on top of that greens and browns like you would compost. Like in our case, what we had available was we had old straw, so we put old straw down, and then we had, and I don't recommend this normally, but we had hot chicken manure, fresh chicken manure. Now see, we weren't going to plant for several months. It was going to sit over the winter and break down, so we were okay. But it broke down beautifully. So we just layered the chicken manure and the old straw on top of newspaper, and we had a fabulous bed by spring. And then we planted asparagus into it. We did not have weed issues. The grass that we've had, or the weeds that we've had since then, have been things we've added, some things that weren't broken down well. But from that original bed, what that newspaper does is it kills out the grass underneath. Because when you start a new bed, you got to get rid of your grass. So that means you either remove it, which is hard to do, or you spray it, like with a Roundup product, which isn't really recommended for to be under vegetables, or you suffocate it, and that's what the newspapers do. And then as the newspapers disintegrate, the earthworms come up in it and work all that, and you have sheet composting. I mean, it's a cool system. And in this, we put compost in here, and then on top is pine needles, because we have those available. Now, pine needles are acidic, so blueberries love them. But they don't have any weed seeds, so we love them. But it's just sheet composting. Very simple, very effective. So if you have a compost pile going now, you have newspapers, you have grass clippings, you know, just start your piles, and you can do it for flowers, you can do them for vegetables, you can do your prep area for like blueberries or strawberries or any of it that way. Very effective, very much a time saver. Rod mentioned one of the sources we use for getting seeds is Morgan Seeds, and they are inexpensive. The catalog is not flashy, no pictures. The seed packets don't have pictures. So what I do is when the seed catalogs come, I cut out all the information and find my varieties, and then we usually make a trip down there and purchase our things from them. But other companies that do a great job, Johnny Seeds is like, a lot of the main growers go to them, and their catalog has so much growing information, and their website does too. Lots of things about harvesting, about varieties, about just growing tips, loaded with information.
And it has, again, pictures of all the items.
Great pictures.
And, you know, description, so it's a great source to go to find out, okay, what do I want to grow? What does it look like? And then if you want to find a cheaper place to buy it, you can even do that.
You can, yes, but they are a reliable company, an excellent company. And then you may have heard of Baker Seeds. Have you heard of them? That's a Missouri company too. This is one of their older catalogs, but their catalogs are like coffee table books. They're beautiful. They will make you want to plant heirloom seeds. They now have a new outlet in California. Yeah, I can't remember. We saw it while we were out there. And another one in Pennsylvania. But the guy was 17 years old, and he started this little seed company in Mansfield, Missouri. And the website is on the back. It's rareseeds.com. And look it up. It's pretty fascinating. And if you're looking for heirloom seeds, that's a good place to go to. And it's a fun place to visit. It really is. But these are 3 of the places we get from. You can go just purchase from the shelves, you know, in the spring when seeds are available. Those packets, the advantage is they have information on them. And a lot of times when you order through the mail, they don't have information on the packet. So that's a difference. It's pretty expensive. Well, I don't know. It depends on what you're buying. Some things are more expensive on when you're buying them little packets like this. Some things are not. I wouldn't do those 10 for $1 type deals. A lot of those seeds are not viable. They're old or they've not been stored correctly. So it depends on what you're purchasing, and you'll get a feel for that. And I guess the reason I always order my seeds is I'm real picky about varieties. I've gardened long enough that I know there are certain varieties that I like. And so I have to order to do that specifically rather than just, you know, picking them up off a shelf somewhere. So that's part of my reasoning. It doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. That's just how I do it. I talked about the seed-saving books. Some things are very easy to save seed from. Peas, beans, lettuce, those things are self-pollinating, very easy. Tomatoes are easy. Squash is easy as long as they're non-hybrids. And you can find instructions in here. You can find instructions online. And you know what? A lot of this information is available online, but I'm going to put in a plug here for print materials too. Because if you don't have access to your online resources, you want a place where you can go look it up. So I like books as well. Some of the books that I have are out of print now, but they're really valuable to me. So I still buy books, but you can go to the library, check those out, see which ones fit you, fit what your goals are. But again, if you're just wanting to look up something quickly about saving a seed, you can look that up online too. One of the other people you're going to hear a lot about as you get into gardening is Elliot Coleman. He's from the Northeast, and he has perfected this whole system of extending the season, winter gardening, and he does hoop houses. And then inside the hoop houses, he does those low tunnels, like what I showed you with the row cover. So if you get things to a certain growing point by like November, before the days get too short, you can harvest all winter out of a hoop house, an unheated greenhouse. And you can do that in Missouri. And there are people doing it all the time. More and more people doing that all the time. But he's the one who first really started experimenting and made it popular. So his books are quite interesting too, in ways to extend your season. So recommend that one. I mentioned square foot gardening. Terry has this one on the website. Let's see. If you're looking for organic methods of pest control and prevention, you know, probably the Rodale, anything by Rodale Gardening Books, that's the company. They've probably had the longest history of research. Again, you can look up things online. There are different methods and sprays and things that you can make yourself. One of the things I think for long term is keeping healthy soil, rotating your plants, and then just clearing out the disease things at the end of the season, getting them out. Like, for example, I mentioned squash bugs. They're a real problem in our area, and they're really hard to kill. And I just know they're going to show up. So I will, in the different parts of the garden, I'll trick them. I'll start so we don't need a huge amount, but I'll do like a yellow squash in a corner, and then several weeks later I'll start one somewhere else because I know that first one's going to die. So then, and with squash bugs, what will happen is you'll see the little bitty tiny eggs, and then they're just everywhere, and then the plant just totally dies. So I rip it out, clean up that spot, and then have another one growing, and then we'll have another third one going. They're easy to grow, they come up fast, but if you put all your squash in one basket, you're going to lose them. Now, the way that you can prevent those bugs, the only way I found that has worked, if I stay on it, is to sprinkle 7, which is an insecticide. It's not organic. It is an insecticide, but if I sprinkle it on the dirt around the base of the plant and they have to crawl through it, then I can keep control of them that way. But it depends on rain, it depends on if you're gone, you know, all those good things, whether or not you're on top of it, because those squash bugs are mean. But they're really the worst thing. Other than that, most of our pests around here come and go, and if you use some row cover and you kind of stay on top of it, you can avoid most of it. If you're a serious gardener, I just discovered this author a year or so ago, Steve Solomon. He was the first owner of the seed company Territorial Seeds in the Northwest. So he approaches it from that viewpoint, and he talks about the companies that produce seeds and save seeds and all of that. But he also talks about a sustainable kind of growing. And he compares the open space growing to the square foot gardening, which everybody always assumes is the best. But he talks about in areas where you have low rainfall or different conditions, the validity of just building the soil and using less water, and which is kind of more our growing style because of where we live. So we've learned a lot from him. So again, if you're looking for good authors, these I think are some of the best, and we have a lot more gardening books than this, but these are some of the best. Okay. I mentioned fall, our garden prep. This is the time of year to get ready for spring. So if you don't already have your garden spot ready, you have time to do the lasagna gardening to expand your space or whatever for spring, to get a soil test if you need to do that. Again, Extension will work with you, and they will tell you the traditional ways to repair the soil or build the soil, and then you can ask for organic ways to do it, and they'll give you that information. Now is the time to go in and get all their freebies or look it up online. Another thing, if any of you have an interest in doing the master gardening, the training is good, but even better is the link to resources. We have access to so much information now that we didn't even know about before. And then like anything, disease issues that come through or insect issues that move in, they give us updated information on that immediately. So that's something you might pursue through your local extension if you have the time and the interest. Let's see. What else would you tell them for fall garden? Plan your water system. I guess this is the planning time for next time. Now I will tell you, we have baby turnips coming up, baby carrots, spinach, lettuce, broccoli, cauliflower, and then green beans. And how we've done it in this drought is we have shade cloth. I bought shade cloth at Sam's, the kind you put as for awnings. And we have our number 9 little hoops that we did with the row cover, only I put shade cloth over them. And then mulched it with straw, and we have our drip tape running down from our little gravity feed system. So we just planted the seeds right along that drip tape, and they have shade cloth and straw to help conserve the moisture. And they came up immediately, no issues whatsoever. Now, I don't know that we'll have enough time for green beans to produce just before the days are short and frost, but I'm going to put row cover over them and extend the season, and maybe they will. But the carrots should do fine. Turnips will grow through drought. It's amazing how well they do. And then lettuce and spinach are short season, so they should do fine. Broccoli and cauliflower will go in we have a larger kind of a unheated hoop house that will have plastic over it and row cover underneath. And that's where we do our real season extending stuff. And then like things like kale will grow. I mean, we have harvested kale the 1st of March. We have had kale growing, done no mulching, had snow and just intense cold. And as soon as that snow melts and you get a little bit of warmth early spring, it starts greening up again. Now, if you were saving seed from that, they would say to you, the official seed saving person would say to you, your seed will lose viability. Your plants won't be as strong and healthy if you just let them keep reseeding. But if you're a homeowner and you're just, your personal garden, I haven't been able to tell any difference, and I've let them do that for 2 or 3 years. Now, eventually, you probably would. But if you're just wanting some greens to supplement and you're wanting your greens early in the season, that's just so easy to let that happen. And then we have another bed where we have Swiss chard that's gone to seed, lettuce that's gone to seed, cilantro that's gone to seed. And see, it's been hot and we've done nothing with them. So rain is coming, I think, tomorrow. So I went over and broke them all down, broke them off, and scattered the seeds all under there, put straw on top. And hopefully they will sprout with some rain, and then I'm going to put plastic over it and extend the season with a hoop. So see, you can do all sorts of things like that if you're experimenting on your own. Incorporate in landscape, you know, new little bed spaces. Try those fruits and berries, the perennials. And then again, focus on things. One recommendation I saw was anything you're growing, figure out like 5 or 6 to 10 ways to cook it or use it so that when it's ready you have a plant. So nothing's wasted. You'll also find what your soil does well with too. We have looser, lighter top on the very top layer of soil. So we do well with cantaloupe, melons, sweet potatoes, that kind of thing really grow well for us. We don't do so well with some of the other things. Corn is always an issue, yeah.
You know, over the years, you know, when that soil, when we first started, was really poor. And what we did, again, is we've got a neighbor who has horses, and we clean out their stables. We add a horse manure, we add compost, we find some old straw or
rabbit manure,
whatever, put on it, and that organic matter builds up. And over a few years, you'd be surprised how much you can build up your soil, and what a difference that makes when you have healthy soil of what you're going to be producing. So.
Absolutely, and then we have the power company dump truckloads of chips at our place, and we let them break down. See, we're on a farm and we have space to do that, but we will let them break down, and like over 1 year they're ready to use. Like around, we mulched all our fruit trees and things with them this year, but then we got another load dumped, and as they break down we'll use them again too. Now we haven't put them on the garden. I think I'd want to compost them more, let them break down several years, or mix them with something before putting them on my vegetables. There's always the risk too that there's walnut in it, and you know, that's just where we live. There are a lot of walnut trees. But I hope you've learned some things that will help you in your own gardens, and we are going to be available for questions of any of these things, and hopefully you'll try some lasagna gardening and look up some new websites and books. And even if you learned we always try one new thing every year, total experiment, something we've never grown before, just for fun. Because in the middle of August and the weeds and the, you know, dry, it's hot, when you lose interest in gardening, that's when it's fun to think of something new, to challenge your creativity. And it's just a healthy thing to do. Children love it. And it's good food as well as a good activity. So happy gardening. Thank you.